So, there might have been a significant time jump between House of the Dragon episodes 5 and 6, with new cast members making their way into the fray, but in regards to power struggles, secret affairs, passive-aggressive conversations, insane family drama, Daemon being douchey but in a somehow charming way, and Viserys being in way over his head, everything was back to normal. In this video, we are going to go over some Easter eggs, hidden references, and callbacks you might have missed in episode 6, and what they might mean moving forward. And yes, there will be spoilers. When it comes to George R.R. Martin and the names of his characters, it can be somewhat of a mixed bag, well, in my subjective opinion anyway. You have the good like Daemon Targaryen, Arya Stark, and Tyrion Lannister. Then you have the bad, which employ comic book-like alliteration like Lancel Lannister, Prince Doran of Dorne, and Drogon the Dragon. Yes, I know why he's called Drogon, but still. And then you have the ugly, which are almost like normal names, but with an O instead of an E, like Joffrey and Andro. You also have the sublime, like Dickon Manwoody, which is just the perfect name, but that's for another day. Back to my original point. One of the best, or worst, depending on how you view it, named characters in Martin's works was referenced in episode 6, Grover Tully. Now, on its own, that name doesn't mean much, but that changes when you include the names of his descendants. Kermit, Elmo, and Oscar. Grover, Kermit, Elmo, and Oscar? Now, where have I heard those names before? Oh yeah! I kind of wish Martin continued on with this Muppet theme, like Fozzie Bear Mormont, Big Bird Stark, and Cookie Monster Lannister. Now those are some great names. Speaking of characters referenced with glorious names, in the moment where Laena Velaryion is talking with Rhanerya about the trouble brewing in the Stepstones and how he wishes to go back there and fight, he references a giant Tyroshi pirate with a purple beard who dresses up in women's frocks. Now, while I like to think it's a reference to Robert De Niro in Stardust, it is actually a reference to a Fire and Blood Easter egg and a direct reference to the character Racallio Ryndoon, the self-proclaimed king of the Narrow Sea, and he is easily one of the quirkiest characters in the book. For instance, he loved kittens but not cats, loved pregnant women but not children, ordered his wives to beat him, threw bones before a battle to decide which god to sacrifice to, and as referenced in the episode, dyes his beard and hair purple with orange streaks and occasionally dresses in frocks. Unfortunately, though, this will likely be the last we hear of Ryndoon, but it was a nice reference nonetheless. Oh, Viserys, you are as suited to being king as a Labrador is suited to being an accountant, and as every episode passes, his face looks more and more like that meme of Ben Affleck smoking. In terms of presence in the episode, Viserys is somewhat in the background in episode 6, with his health failing even more, his arm now fully gone, his Targaryen hair thinning, and his face aged significantly since the last time we saw him. But there's one heart-wrenching detail you might have missed at the end of the episode. As Larys monologues about the weakness children bring to a person's life, Viserys puts on a ring with a bird design and takes comfort in it. That ring belonged to his late wife Emma, and shows that despite the fact he has remarried and also made the choice to sacrifice her life in order to try and save the life of his son, he still mourns for her and loved her the most. Throughout the first 5 episodes of House of the Dragon, the decor on the walls had a strong theme of sex and dragons, which is essentially Game of Thrones in a nutshell. But anyway, in episode 6, the decor, particularly in Viserys' chambers, has changed to something a little more family-friendly, which suggests that Alicent has been slowly muting the Targaryen themes in the nation's capital. Also worth mentioning is that Alicent is still wearing the war color of House Hightower, green, along with her 2 sons Aegon and Aemond, while Rhaenyra's sons were dressed in the Targaryen colors of red and black. This again is setting up the 2 major factions, the Green and Blacks, during the infamous Dance of the Dragons, so make sure to keep an eye on the colors each character wears in the coming episodes. We saw Daemon make his play for Laena Velaryon in episode 5 after a flirty exchange at Rhaenyra's wedding, and since then the two have had a pair of children and taken off to Pentos, where Daemon is treated with the respect he desperately craves. Before her death during childbirth, Laena tells Daemon she wants to return to her family home of Driftmark to raise her children. Now, these story beats are pretty similar to Fire and Blood, but with a couple of differences. In Fire and Blood, the pair take off to Old Valyria to, quote, search out the secrets of the Dragon Lords of the Old Freehold, before going to Pentos, but instead of remaining there, they end up going together to Dragonstone and spending time with Rhaenyra. Laena does also end up dying during childbirth, but instead of being set on fire by her dragon, she gives birth to Daemon's son, only for him to die an hour later, before trying to fly Vhagar one last time, but dying on the way. As you saw in episode 6, Sir Harwin Strong is the illegitimate father of Rhaenyra's 3 sons, and it is seemingly no secret in King's Landing. In fact, Alicent's knowing line of, do keep trying, soon or late you may get one that looks just like you, to Laenor is taken straight out of the book. Non-book readers likely didn't see this relationship coming, as the pair really didn't have enough time together on screen, but there were some subtle moments of foreshadowing to their relationship, such as the look he gave her when she came back covered in boar's blood in episode 3, the moment he let her pass in episode 4, and when he saved her during the fracas at the wedding in episode 5. Keeping on with the Strongs, which sounds like a House of Dragon version of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and now I can't not imagine Kylie taking down Kim and Kris in the same way that Larys did in House of the Dragon. Anyway, back to the Strongs. Harwin and Lionel's fiery demise is very similar to the book, but like a number of plot points in the series, it's less cut and dry in the book. While the show matter-of-factly states that Larys was behind their deaths to improve his standing in King's Landing, hey, that rhymed. This is only alluded to in the book, and there are also a number of other potential conspirators behind their deaths. One suggestion is that it was the sea snake, Corlys Velaryon, seeking vengeance against the man who had cuckolded his son. One theory suggests it was King Viserys, who was angry about the rumors between Harwin and his daughter, while another was that it was Harrenhal itself, which, as Larys states, supposedly haunted. Also, on the subject of Harrenhal, its smoldering ruins were first seen in Game of Thrones, but this is the first time we saw it fully standing. House of the Dragon is essentially a Doctor Who reunion, with Steve Toussaint, Matthew Needham, and of course Matt Smith, all appearing in the classic show. But, did you catch the other Doctor Who connection? The teen version of Aegon Targaryen is played by Ty Tennant, who is the son of, in my opinion, the best Doctor of all time, David Tennant. Speaking of Aegon, one of the first scenes we see of him, he's, pleasuring himself while looking out at the view of King's Landing from his window, which is admittedly slightly better than what Tom and Baratheon did from that window. Now, this is a little contentious, but this scene reminds me of a particular moment from another amazing HBO show, Succession, where Roman Roy does a similar thing from his office window. To be honest, the characters have some similarities, such as being born into a prestigious position but generally uninterested with their duties, both like to wind up their siblings, and both have severe mother issues, so I can see it being intentional. Now, it wouldn't be House of the Dragon without actually having some dragons on display, and boy did we get our fill here. Firstly, we saw Vermax being tamed by Jace Velaryon, while others referenced are Dreamfire and Sunfire. Also, the whole pig prank, which I assume is a play on the expression pigs can fly and perhaps carry, pig's blood, is a reference to Balerion, as Aegon calls the pig, quote, the Pink Dread, a play on Balerion's nickname of, quote, the Black Dread. But the main dragon on show in episode 5 is Vhagar, the oldest living dragon who was actually alive during Aegon the Conqueror's invasion of Westeros. If you remember back in episode 2, a young Laena asked King Viserys if he knew the whereabouts of the old dragon who was at the time missing. Flash forward nearly 2 decades, Vhagar has returned and has bonded with Laena, although it is unclear how this happened. If there is anyone who knows about the violent feud between the Brackens and the Blackwoods, it's Rhanerya, as she witnessed the rivalry coming to a bloody head as they tried to win her hand at Storm's End. Flash forward over a decade and the rivalry is back in full swing, with the two families in a heated land dispute, and Rhanerya suggesting that the small council look into this issue as they, quote, will use any excuse to spill each other's blood. In the book, this rivalry spans centuries, way before the Targaryens even came to Westeros, and after the conquering of the nation by the House of the Dragon, Queen Visenya, Aegon the Conqueror's sister wife, had to broker a double wedding between the two families in order to ensure peace in the realm. That peace did not last long, and look out for how that rivalry continues to boil away as the show goes on. If there is one thing the Valyrians love, even more than life itself, it is the sea, and in particular, sailing it. This is reflected in the way they talk, and their dialogue is usually riddled with nautical analogies. Take, for example, the moment that Laenor discusses the brewing trouble in the Stepstones, and how he longs to return to battle, but Rhaenyra says that he should stay and help deal with the issue of succession, and in particular the legitimacy of her children. Laenor says in response to the line, quote, the wise sailor flees the storm as it gathers. Now this line may sound familiar to you, and for good reason, as it is similar to the line his father Corlys said to Viserys in episode 2 in regards to the issue of succession, with him saying, quote, to elude a storm, you can either sail into it or around it, but you must never await its coming. See, Valyrian men have only one thing on their mind, and it's disgusting: the sea. And finally, one notable character missing in episode 6 was that of the sea snake, who, if they follow the book, will prove himself as one of the best and most badass characters ever created by Martin. The character was nearly played by Danny Sapani before it went to Steve Toussaint, who has incidentally auditioned for multiple roles in Game of Thrones before being cast in the spin-off series. So, what did you make of this episode? Are you enjoying the series so far? Were there any Easter eggs or references we missed? Let us know in the comments below and make sure to subscribe to the channel today for all this and more.